Alright, welcome back everybody. This is the second video in our quest to develop a custom WordPress template. So in this video, we're going to go through creating our directories, setting our environment, creating a config file, and our index and style sheet. So let's get into our IDE. I use Brackets. It's an Adobe program. I really like it. I've used a bunch of them, but Brackets is the best. If you don't have one and you're looking for one, I recommend this, Brackets.io. You can find it here for free. It's an Adobe program. It's like Dreamweaver, but better. Okay, so what we're going to do now, as I said, we're going to create our file structure. We're going to set up our environment. We're going to build a config file, index, and style sheet. So first off, let's build some of our file structures here. So Bootstrap. You may have heard of Bootstrap. It is very cool, and I highly recommend it. I'm going to do some videos where we just talk about Bootstrap and get into it. I'm going to use it for this project, so I'll kind of go over it as we're building the website together, so you'll probably be able to pick it up as I'm going along. But look out for my Bootstrap tutorial videos. So Bootstrap, we're going to have a CSS folder for the CSS files that we create and a library of other CSSs outside of Bootstrap. We're going to do an image folder where we store all of our images. We're going to do a JavaScript folder to house our JavaScript libraries. There is a folder called includes. I call that includes. You can call it whatever you want, but essentially this folder is where we are going to store our modularized code. So for example, if you're not familiar with this, websites should be object-oriented as much as possible. They should be elements of your website should be independent of each other. So let's say that this section here, this bar at the top, let's say that this is your website header. This code, since it's going to be on every page, if I go to comments, it's going to be up here too. That should be its own file, so I don't have to write it over and over and over. And it comes in handy when you're writing like a main nav. You don't want to have your main nav code on every single page. So we modularize our code. So that's what this is. We're going to put our main nav, our banner, anything in there that we can modularize. Okay, we have JavaScript, and then finally the last thing we need, this is WordPress specific page templates. Okay, so we have all of that. This is the file structure that we're going to be going off of. You can do it any way you want. This is just how I set up my environment. Page templates, I believe, needs to be named that exact way, page-templates. And here, this is going to be like our sub-page template. Maybe we want our About Us page to look different, or Contact Us page. That's where our templates go. Okay, so moving on. So here I have our index page, bare bones, nothing's been added. But before we add that, we're going to add a config file, config.php. Now, a config file is really important because what it does, it's going to save you a lot of heartache. What we're going to do, we're going to put that WP content, themes, eyes for pies. I'm going to save it right there. And if you guys don't remember from our last video, that's our file path. If you're using XAMPP, go into XAMPP, htdocs, project folder, WP content themes, name of your theme folder. Save it here. Okay, so I don't know how familiar you guys are with development, but if you have ever moved a website from one server to another, or you moved a file and everything breaks, it's because your file paths are not relative. This is important because you want to save yourself as much work as possible. So we can create a config file where we configure our file paths. Okay, and it's really easy, and I'll kind of get into it and you'll kind of understand a little bit more, but we're going to use the define tag, and then what we do is we set up our quotation marks, and then we're going to call this file path something. So we're going to define file paths, essentially. I'm going to call mine root. So after you have that in your quotation marks, you're going to put a comma after and set up another pair of quotation marks. And then in here, it needs to know exactly where the file structure begins. Since I called this root because I want everything to be relative to my root directory. So you're going to copy that URL and you're going to paste it here. That's if you're using XAMPP. If you're using an external server, you can call something like Wordpress URL, or URL or whatever you want. And then what you would do is have your file path there. www, mine would be eyes4pies.com. I'm going to leave that there because my intention is to transfer everything I build from XAMPP to my external server. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We define our file paths. So that means whenever we create a link or we have we're referencing an image, these file paths are relative, so we can move our website to another server and it won't break. Okay, so going back here, let's save this. This is our Index.php file. Now, your home page always needs to be named index. We are working in WordPress, which means this needs to be a PHP file type, so we're going to call it Index.php. That needs to be in your root directory. Okay, the browser by default looks for the word index, and that's the home page. That's how it knows what page is the home page. We're going to save that. Okay, so here we have our just basic template. So the first thing we need to do, in order for WordPress to acknowledge that this is a WordPress template, what we need to do is break into PHP at the very top. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to set up some comments here. So WordPress looks for these comments to see exactly what's going on here. So let's see, we're going to go the main template file. We're going to space that out and clean it up. We're going to go at link, put in your URL here. If you don't have one, just write in what you want it to be. Mine is eyes4pies. Okay, I'm going to space it out again, and then we're going to type in @package WordPress. And then we're going to do another line. We're going to go @subpackage eyes4pies. Let's see, let's capitalize that, eyes4pies. And then finally, we're going to say @since eyes4pies 1.0. This is the first rendition of this. Okay, so we set up our comments here. WordPress looks for this. Let's kind of space this out, make it look a little bit nicer. Okay, and then at the very end of all of this, we're going to call a function, getHeader. Okay, so WordPress has specific PHP commands, and this is the first one we're going to use. We're going to call the getHeader file. Okay, we're not going to build that just yet. We're going to move on to the style sheet, and then we're going to come back and then get our header. But essentially, just as I said before, calling our header. So this might be your header, whatever it may be. So we're going to call that, and let's pull this up, and then the rest of it is going to go down and read the rest of your file. Okay, so that's our Index.php. So the last thing that we're going to go over today with this video is setting up our style sheet. So let's go ahead and create a new file, and we're going to call this Style.css. Again, make sure that you're saving it where it needs to go. Mine is XAMPP, htdocs, eyes4pies, content, themes, eyes4pies. Your style sheet, now I did create a style or a CSS folder. We're not going to put that there because WordPress specifically looks for the style sheet that's located in the root directory as the main style sheet. So we're going to save it there. Okay. Now there is something that we do have to write for WordPress to understand that this is our CSS. So if we go WordPress theme, let's see, new page template. There we go. That might be it. Should be, maybe this is it. Let's take a look. Oh, that's not it. Let's see. That's not it. It's a WordPress new CSS file template. Here we go. Theme development. Okay, so you're going to go to WordPress theme development, and then it's down here. You're going to copy this block of code, and this is going to be the very first thing in your template. This needs to be in here. So we have to call, this is the theme name, Eyes for Pies. Theme URI, let's see, this is going to be Eyes for Pies, because that's what I named it in my file structure. The author, you can put your name here. That was Harley. We don't need a description. It is nice to have your version number. We don't need that. We don't need that. Go Eyes for Pies. Okay, cool. And that's how we set up our style sheet. Okay, so now in the next video, what we're going to do is I'm going to go over creating the head file, or the header, because we called that function here. We'll create the header in the next video, and we'll get into setting up all of our libraries in the next file, and then creating the footer. So see you next time.